What is up, guys, and welcome to another episode of Guarani Vision. Welcome to the first ever podcast dedicated to Paraguayan football in English. As always, and I'm Roberto Rojas, and joining me are my three great co-hosts. And, I think we're going to be a little bit different today. We'll stay stateside with this one. We'll go straight to a state that may or may not be the biggest news story in not just in the United States, but I think in the world right now. Let's go all the way to South Beach, all the way to Florida. Maria Britos, how are you?
Hey guys, how are you? I'm a little nervous, a little everywhere this week. If you guys don't know, the elections are coming up. So it's a little bit nerve-wracking down here, well, in the States, for you as well, Roberto and Ralph. But I'm good. Just, excited for another episode again. And which episode is it? I think the 7th, if I'm not right. If I'm not
7th.
wrong.
Yeah, 7th.
Yeah. So that's crazy. We're almost at 10. And I'm happy to start talking about the new the list of the players that are going to be playing again for Paraguay. So let's see what happens. It looks like a very similar list than last time, and this time we're going to play against Argentina and Bolivia, so that's going to be a huge phase of the qualifiers, and I can't wait to see what the new team will bring. Let's see what the players from our country are going to be like. I'm sure it's going to be very similar, so maybe we'll have a little bit of surprises, but yeah. And then I'm happy to talk about some Sudamericana, that we had some representation as well this week with Sudamerica and Deportivo Luqueño. But yeah, I don't know. How are you again, Roberto? Since you are always asking the questions,
yeah.
ask you.
Well, I think I'll have to agree and say that, yeah, I'm kind of a bit nervous as well. I think a lot of people in this country, and maybe most of the world, is as well. I think certainly
yes.
Every 4 years, this kind of election brings all the attention from all over the world, be it in Florida, be it in Connecticut, or even be it in Paraguay. Everyone's keeping an eye on that, but we'll take away politics. Yeah, I think it's I think it's perfect that we're talking about a lot of things that are happening over the last week. We probably saw some, as you mentioned, the call-ups of the new players for the Paraguay squad in the upcoming World Cup qualifiers. It seems like only a couple of weeks ago we were just talking about those games against Peru and Venezuela, and now we have to go back and talk about these next two games. So super excited about that. Definitely got some Sudamericana action going on, possibly some coaching changes as well, as we saw, guys. I think that's the one that might be on everyone's mouth, you would say, in Paraguay. But before we get to that, let's go to our other co-host all the way in Florida as well, who, I think definitely needs some sort of joy, certainly after what Arsenal have been doing. But hey, at least you should be happy that Spurs lost over the midweek in the Europa League. Ralph Hanna, how are you, man?
Hey guys, thanks. Good, I'm doing good. Bit nervous as well, like you were talking about. Nervous for Arsenal, who are playing on Sunday against Man United. We haven't won away in the top 6 for a long time, but that would be for another podcast. Interested about what's going on with the call-ups. So we got the list today. The Sudamericana, we had a couple of games to talk through the managerial changes. You mentioned Roberto. We're going to talk about an exciting young player who might be on his way out of Paraguay, which I think for our audience is always interesting to know, like, who are the up-and-coming stars, or who are the players that have done enough to be the next Albirroja or the next Valbuena that are moving away from the country. So yeah, that's to talk about. Looking forward to it.
And we'll go straight to that, because this news came at the 11th hour, literally just hours before we were starting to recording. Are the call-ups for the national team for these upcoming games against Argentina and Bolivia. So we'll go to you as well, Perez, and welcome again to the show. I think we see something a bit interesting, you would say. I think obviously some of the key names that we see here, the two names that came into the squad that were not included in last month's squad, or at least, this month's squad, was Mathias Rojas and Lorenzo Melgarejo, both of them playing at Racing in Argentina. You don't see the names of Celso Ortiz, Alan Barreiro, and Brian Zamudio on this side, but you do see Hernan Perez on this side. You see also the familiar names that we saw in the last round. So it looks to me that from a positive standpoint, that Eduardo Berizzo is looking to a side that I believe are challenging for something. You know, that they really are keeping the base of the players, and you don't want a team to be all messed up and all over the place, but maintaining a squad of players is important for this qualifier process. So Fede, welcome again to the show. And how do you feel about this squad? Just like your immediate reactions.
Hi, Roberto. Hi, guys. Well, hi to everybody. Well, we're actually having a good week, I believe. A lot of matches in Copa Sudamericana. We've been following what happened with Sportivo Luqueño, with Sol de America, but the latest news has to do with the Albirroja. We've seen other countries already showing their list for the third and fourth match of the qualifiers that are coming up very soon, and we just wanted to see what Paraguay was going to show. We wanted to see if Berizzo maintained most of the players. There's not much time between the first match and this match. There's going to be more time for next year, for 2021. We might see more changes in the list then, but I'm not surprised with the guys that we're taking out. I think Albirroja is having a really good moment in Europe, but he just got there, and we're talking about 3 players that didn't have minutes, I believe, in the first 2 matches. So we're not losing players that we've seen. They'll just have to keep waiting for their chances, and we're getting players that have had a little time with the shirt. I believe Mathias Rojas and Lorenzo Melgarejo need more chances. They're 2 great players. They had a great match the other day. I was watching it in Copa Libertadores. Mathias Rojas brings you that set piece. He has a great kick from outside of the box. Also, he has a great shot, and I think he's a player that can also do very well there with Almiron. He's a very complete player. I think he's just growing and growing ever since I saw him lead Paraguay, shortly in Lanús, then in Defensa y Justicia, and now in Racing. He looks like such an important player in that Racing, in the structure. He plays like a 10, but he can do so much also. And so I'm really happy for him. I think he's a big, he can be a big player. He can become a big player in this Paraguayan squad also. So I'm happy for his chance. I think Mathias Rojas, especially because of how Berizzo plays also. I think he's that kind of player that Berizzo likes in the midfield, and he can really take advantage of the chances that might come, especially because we have Cubas out. So Berizzo is going to have to change that midfield, especially for the first match against Argentina. Well, if he puts another player like Cubas, or he puts more defensive guys also. There's a lot of strategy going on into this first game against Argentina, and then we'll have Bolivia here in Paraguay.
Yeah, I think I agree about Mati Rojas. It's very nice to see him get the call up. It's interesting that he's called up 2 left-footed players, if I'm right, Melgarejo and Rojas, which maybe suggests maybe he wants a bit more. Maybe he's looking for balance on his team, or maybe it just happens to be the 2 better players were left-footed. One thing that Rojas has is that really good set piece and dead balls. And it reminds me of a player that they used to be in the squad for Paraguay called Victor Ayala, that he was really key during Pelusa's time when the team wasn't playing that good, but he had somebody like Ayala that was very good from set pieces to help Paraguay in that department. So that also might be part of his thinking with Rojas. And then I thought back to our guys in the MLS, and I thought poor Cacu and Gaston Jimenez that only just got through quarantine. They got to play 1 game. Well, Gaston Jimenez started on Wednesday, I think it was, and Cacu came on as a sub. And now they called up again, so they're coming back, and then they're going to have to do quarantine again because of the strict MLS rules. So spare thought for those guys who haven't even got much football in between these qualifiers because of those rules. And like Fede says, I don't think it was necessary to make huge changes because we already know what's going on with this team. We don't want to make some huge changes before these games that are so short. So it's more thinking 2021 could be the time when you see some some major changes. And Roberto's just reminded me there in the chat that the guys are in the playoffs as well. So it's huge. I mean, both Caco and Gaston Jimenez are big losses for their team. But like they said last time, they're coming come what may. And what we saw in the first combo is that Gaston Jimenez especially is very important to the build-up and the makeup of this Berizzo side.
I think I'm going to piggyback off of your comment, Ralph, on Gaston Jimenez and Kaku, that, you know, it might not be such a good thing. It might be a good thing that they're not playing as much with their clubs, so that they can be fresh and they can be ready to play for Paraguay. But another thing that I wanted to sort of point out or ask you guys, would it be a possibility that maybe Berizzo is looking into players that are more familiar with the Argentinian side of playing? You know, these two players that are coming now, these new players are both playing in Argentina. So maybe that's something that he's looking into that could help with Paraguay play against Argentina.
Yeah, I wanted to go through that. I think, especially given it's the biggest rivals, Paraguay's obviously wanted to play well against Argentina. They're away at La Bombonera. I think they know that, you know, all hands on deck. You know, they want to have their strongest players. They want to have the best team possible. And they know about this. I think they know that, you know, they impressed, you would say, in recent games against Argentina. You know, they didn't lose any of those games in qualifying last time around. They tied them in the Copa America. So they are familiar with the squad a little bit. And they want to go for what they did last time, you know, where they won in Argentina. So they want to try it again and go for it. So, yeah, I think I agree, Money. I think it's important that you want to have those players that are familiar, that have already the history playing against these type of players. I mean, obviously, the big star will be Lionel Messi, and trying to see how they could stop him. But certainly, I think they understand the message, and the goal is to, you know, go there and get a good result. I mean, we'll talk about that in our preview when it comes, but I think ultimately these guys know that they want to beat Argentina. And I think more importantly, I think if you look at the squad real quick, there's 3 guys that were born in Argentina who played for Argentina at youth level, and they're going to play against their mother country. And of course, you have a coach that is Argentinian. So a lot of storylines there.
And it's going to be their first time, right? The first time is always different, you know. So we'll see how Gaston Jimenez does that. Andres Cubas is out for the match. We talked about him. He's also one of those guys that you mentioned, Roberto, but he's not going to be in this match. We'll see if one of the players from the National League gets a spot also, because for now we have a list of just 21 players. Last time I believe it was 30, so there's 7 spots apparently that are still open. We lost a couple of players because of the COVID on the last 2 matches. Hopefully that won't happen this time. I think that changed a lot of the plans also in the preview. Hopefully we won't have that kind of problems now before heading into a very important match like Argentina. But I think mainly Berizzo, you know, he's backing up the team. I think he was satisfied with what he saw in the first 2 matches, and I think he's just tapping the guys in the back and saying, well job, this is the way we need to go. We need to keep on moving forward, and the team needs to evolve. You know, defensively, we talked about this. We're going to talk a lot about it on the preview also. The team needs to improve, but with the same guys, you can do that. You just need to keep working at it. The thing I see with Melgarejo is, where is he going to play? Is he going to play on the midfield? Is he going to play more forward? I was looking at the list, and they didn't specify the positions on this first list. That usually helps to know where the manager or where the coach wants to use these guys. And there's a lot of players that we still haven't seen. We saw Angel Romero on the last 2 matches, but we didn't see his brother, Oscar. He didn't play. So there's guys that also want to come in and show their stuff in the next games. We'll see if they get chances also, because we see a lot of names that are coming back, but they didn't have playing time in the first 2 matches in the qualifiers.
Yeah, I was thinking about Melgarejo. He actually started, I think, playing like left back when he was in Benfica, And then he was playing pretty much as a forward when he moved to Russia and Spartak Moscow. He plays in the middle. I mean, he's a very versatile player, which is also what these coaches love to have in their squads, right? You have a player that can go in all kinds of different positions, and depending on if there are some problems with COVID, like last time, or any kind of injuries, then you have somebody who could fill one or two positions. So I think that's very helpful, and Berizzo's interested in that. One player I wanted to mention that didn't get the call up that maybe he was hoping to, because he's on top form in Mexico, is Carlos Gonzalez at Pumas. He's been playing very well. What we noticed is 3 foreign base players have been left out, and only 2 were brought in. So it looks like an extra spot is going to a local player, and it's looking like that's a forward, because both Zamudio and oh my gosh, it's gone, Alan Barreiro. Yeah, but Zamudio and Barreiro are forwards, and they've gone. So you're expecting that at least one more forward is going to come in from the local team. So maybe, as Carlos Gonzalez wasn't called up from Pumas in Mexico, maybe it's going to be somebody like Sebastian Ferreira, who was a top scorer in the Apertura and scored a great goal that we talked about on here the other day for Libertad in the Libertadores. I don't know what you guys think about that possibility.
Yeah, I mean, certainly it's a surprise. I think certainly he's been one of the more consistent strikers, one of the most consistent players, I would say, on Paraguay over the last year or so. You know, he only had 1 call up. It was back in his first call up for Berizzo back in March. I remember against Peru and Mexico, he only played 60 minutes or something, and he hasn't come back since. You know, it's very interesting, very weird, I would say, given that he's scoring goals in the Simmer League where Lescano is coming from, and obviously we see a lot of Paraguayans playing in Mexico. So certainly there has to be something, or what maybe just doesn't fit the style that Berizzo has. I think one name that, just looking at the comments of the replies from the list that was tweeted out, Hernan Perez on the squad, hugely negative. Certainly wasn't a player that definitely performed well in the first game against Peru, and he comes back. I mean, that's kind of the big incognito that we have, is, you know, he returns to the squad despite not being in form and not performing well in that first combo. I mean, I don't know what you guys think about that.
I don't like it. I don't know what Maria and Ralph think about it, but I don't like the negativity from people. You know, this is like the 3rd game, and Hernan Perez barely played 1 game. I know he's been in the squad for many years, but he hasn't had that many chances. And they threw him on the left side. He's never played there. I think people are just being too hard on Hernan Perez. I think he doesn't deserve that. We're talking about we're talking about a guy that's come from the other side of the world so many times just to sit in the bench and never even have minutes. And we've had guys that have gone through that same situation and they quit it. They said, no, I'm done. I don't want to do the trip anymore. I'm going. Why am I going? They take me and they never use me. But Hernan Perez never did that. You know, he's always happy to be with the squad. He's always happy just to be part of it. So I think people need to give him a little bit more credit and just wait for him. Maybe he'll one day be that player that we're all waiting for him to be, and a team player also. But we have a lot of options there on that right side also. That's why I think people are criticizing him. But I think people are just being unfair with him.
I think what Berizzo likes in Hernan Perez, and that's the part that maybe the fans aren't interested in, is he's very disciplined tracking back, and he's very good tactically to know his position. So while he hasn't really blown away offensively, which is where you're hoping from, because he's playing on the wing, he's actually very useful for that tracking back. When you have such an attacking player like Blas Riveros or someone like that, you know, the fullbacks, then it's very useful to have, you know, players that know their role very well. It could be interesting as well to see that Melgarejo is called up, because that's the exact job Melgarejo can do as well. So maybe he's thinking about that.
I certainly agree with both of you guys, and I just want to mention that it's a typical Paraguayan thinking, and you know, we don't have a lot of patience. So I think it is important, like Fede said, that we should give him more of a chance. We have to remember that this is an evolving and a changing squad. So there's definitely going to be a lot of changes and a lot of tryouts and testings here and there that we can see that will work better, that Berizzo will see that will work better for his team. So it's very important to just keep calm and remember that this is just the very first steps into the qualifying process. Obviously, it's very important to keep a good sheet and keep winning games, but definitely just remain as calm as possible. Obviously, there's always going to be critics, but that's the life of football and as a player.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think, it's not a race, it's a marathon. It's 2 games out of 18. I mean, certainly people want to win big, 3-0, 4-0, but unfortunately it can't be like that always. But yeah, I think it's important to stay patient and yeah, if there's something that maybe Berizzo is seeing that we're not seeing, who are we to doubt him? Maybe he does surprise us and does something. If he plays, comes in as a super sub and does something, and then all of a sudden he's an idol. But then after not playing the next game very well, you get criticized. So yeah, it's like that. It's like that for not just for us. It's like that all over the world. Doesn't matter if you're Paraguay, Germany, Guatemala, whatever. Like that, you will get praised and criticized.
You have to respect the guy that did so many years, that was so many years in Spain, that has done practically all his career outside of the country. He has to have something. All of the coaches called him up. All of the last coaches in Paraguay, they all called him up. They all used him. Maybe they didn't give him a main role in the team, but they all used him. So he has to have something that for him to be called up almost every time. The coaches must like his playing style. Like Rob said, he gives you a lot of things on the side. So I think people just need to be patient. Maria's point is so important. This is just such a long road, and the negativity so soon, so early in this stage. I believe it's just not the way to go, and people need to chant. People need to get behind this team. People need to buy the jersey. We need to change that atmosphere here in Paraguay, because I think it all comes from not going to the last 2 World Cups. I think it's just that, I think they just need to find somebody to say, this is the guilty guy for the last match. This is the guy that hasn't done something well. I think it just comes up to that. Everybody's just looking for somebody to hit. Something has to be wrong every time.
It's frustration, definitely, from the country. But maybe Hernan is just one of those players that's just good in the locker room. That's very motivating. I'm not sure how he is behind the scenes, but it could be that one person that motivates the team, and it's a leader type. That's why he's been called so many times. But who knows? Maybe he has other qualities that Berizzo sees, but that could be one thing that is very also necessary and important in a team.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think he's been on the squad for 10 years or something, so clearly has a veteran say. I think he's 31 or something, so he's not exactly old either. So yeah, I agree. I think maybe he has something that the coach likes, that the team likes, and if that's the case, then maybe it's realistic and it's positive. So yeah, that's all we have to do. Just support these players, hope for the best, and again, long process, 2 games away. I mean, we're not in a bad situation like other countries. I mean, we haven't lost. So all we have to do is just stay positive and trust these guys, which I think is important. But from a veteran player to a more younger player, or I should say coming up player, we got to talk about a player that, I think will also be on the squad for the Paraguay games against Argentina and Bolivia, but has also risen in stock. And I'm talking about Cerro Porteño captain Mathias Villasanti, a midfielder. I think he's 23, if I'm not mistaken, who certainly is becoming one of the more rising gems coming from Paraguayan football at the moment. Certainly has gotten the interest of many clubs, most importantly from Palmeiras, who just a couple days ago received an offer of about $3 million or something along those lines, a reasonable price, but it's still in negotiations at the moment. There hasn't been a done deal as of yet. But this is interesting, guys. I think he's certainly a player that a lot of teams want. I don't disagree on him wanting to make that move to Brazil, but Fede, going to you on this one, you had mentioned that maybe this is a player that maybe doesn't even need that jump to Brazil. Maybe he needs a jump to Europe because he's just that good of a player. I mean, what are your thoughts on this? And should he take this? I mean, he's right at the age where he can grow and blossom into a better player in a better league. I mean, should he take this opportunity and go to Palmeiras, or just wait it out, see what happens? Maybe he gets a good game in the qualifiers and that his stock rises.
Yeah, the issue also, it's very important to tell people that we talked about it last week. Turin left Cerro Porteño, so they got a little money out of that. They took out a weight off because they also needed to give some money to Turin. So they're not in a rush right now to sell another important player of their starting 11. And they look at Villasanti like their captain, that someone that came in from the youth teams also. And so he's very important in the locker room. He's very important in the pitch. And I don't know if they really want to lose him now, but the player can put in some pressure, his agent also. But I believe this guy is ready to just go straight to Europe. You know, he's already playing on the national team. Yeah, he doesn't hesitate with either of those two shirts. He plays great. He's just growing and growing also. We don't know how much he's really going to grow in his career. He's just starting out here in Paraguay. He just had the big tournament with the Apertura, his first championship. But you know, these guys leave with this age here in Paraguay, when they're 20, 21, 22, 23, it's like they have to be sold, because after that it's really hard to sell these kind of players for that amount of money. So maybe the pressure is going to be on Cerro Porteño to come with an agreement with Palmeiras. The Palmeiras made a first offer. Cerro Porteño didn't like it. Cerro Porteño sent it back to Palmeiras, and Palmeiras is probably going to make a second offer. We'll see if that second offer is going to be enough for Cerro Porteño to let go of Mathias Villasanti. They could lose a very important player for their team, for Chiqui Arce's way of playing, one of the most aggressive players there in the midfield. But Cerro Porteño has done that in the last couple of years. It's really hard for them to maintain a base. It's really hard for them to maintain these young players that come out, and they have so much talent. And Brazil is probably the only place here in South America that can play these amount of millions of dollars for these kind of players that could earn that money only going to the MLS or only going to Europe straight away. So we'll see just how it turns out. But I think Mathias Villasanti is obviously one of the players to sell right now here in Paraguay. He's one of the best players we have.
Yeah, I think he's developed so much as a player from when he started. He reminds me a bit of Almironde. He was like very skinny, kind of came in this, didn't seem like a very athletic type of player. But now, as Fede was just saying, he's one of the most aggressive players. He's like a ball winner, but he also makes those late runs into the box. So he's a threat going forward. He's very good at pressing. So of course, so many European teams now, the pressing system they have is so important, like creating those traps and being able to do that. So it is a good question that Roberto raised about maybe he could go straight to Europe. I think though, yes, there's a lot of things about economic considerations, timing, if the offer comes now, is it best just to go because maybe you miss your chance and you stay and you're still in Paraguay? Like, let's take an example of someone like Lucena, who's also in the squad, also plays for Cerro alongside Villasanti. He's a bit older now, like 26, 27. He had the quality in his moment to have gone. You have Arzamendia, who Cerro kind of holding on to, but maybe it's also his time from that great generation they have. But for Villasanti, I mean, if he does end up in Palmeiras, he's of course will play alongside Gustavo Gomez, who's also in the Paraguay team. And I think we've seen that Brazil can act as a stepping stone. Either Brazil or Argentina can be that kind of middle ground before you make the jump to Europe. So it might be something he's looking to do, hopefully for a kind of 1 year, 18-month kind of time period. And if he has a good season in Palmeiras or a good year or so in Palmeiras, he can make that leap to Europe, which must be his kind of ultimate goal, I think, as a professional.
Yeah, I wanted to jump into that. I think that's important because I think we see a lot of players historically, you would say, not just recently, I think, who have made that jump to Brazil, to an Argentina, to Mexico even, where they're in their early 20s. And you know how people want to expect those players to be playing in Europe, playing in the top leagues, that kind of thing. But you have to look at Almirón, for example. I mean, he didn't just leave Cerro to go straight to Newcastle. He had to take two connections, we would say. He had to go to Argentina at Lanús. Then he went to Atlanta. Then he got his move to Newcastle. Balbuena as well went to Corinthians. Then he went to West Ham. Gustavo Gomez went to Argentina, went to Milan. Alderete, who just got his move to Hertha Berlin, he had to play in Argentina. A lot of these guys are in similar situation. And you look at other guys that are playing right now in Argentina, for example, like who are much younger, I should say, Mathias Rojas, Roberto Rojas, et cetera, who are much more younger, who are, trying to raise their stock because it's a league that more scouts are watching because they understand that it's a better league, and that if the right deal comes, that they can head to Europe and head to play those big leagues. So yeah, I think certainly he should take it. I mean, this is my personal opinion. I think he should take it. I mean, it would be a big loss for Cedro to lose not just their striker, their leading goal scorer, but now to lose their captain. But I think it's for the best. I think it's for the best for him, because I think certainly, if he does make that call up to the national team, he could be a player that can be useful on this side. And, I think that's the whole thing of these clubs. It's like, you want to breed your players. You want to, like he said, he comes from the academy, he ends up captaining the squad, and now he wants to achieve his dream and play for a much bigger club in the continent or even in Europe. I think that's the ultimate dream. And if it goes well for him, who's to say that, in like 18 months, 2 years, he can go to Europe and play at one of the big teams in the world. I mean, it's a possibility, and I think that's the dream everyone wants.
Now put the Cerro Porteño jersey on, please, Roberto, and speak from the fan side of you, because if Cerro Porteño keeps doing this, like they sold the Romero twins in a moment when they were before playing the Copa Libertadores, now they're going to do the same thing. They were champions in the Apertura, and now they're selling all their stars. By the time the Copa Libertadores comes, they're going to need to make a whole new squad to try and do something in Copa Libertadores, which is what the fans really want from Cerro Porteño. They want to run in Copa Libertadores. So there's the club side also. There's the fans also there that are going to put their pressure. And money-wise, I think Cerro Porteño is trying to get stable again in that sense, so they don't have to sell all the players all the time. But it's just what's happened to Cerro Porteño in these last couple of years. They've had a lot of problems with keeping their best players.
Yeah, but I think as well, I think ultimately that's just how it works. I mean, you're going to find another Villasanti out there in their academy. I mean, maybe he's not there yet. Maybe they're just waiting to see where he comes, but there's always going to be a replacement, like the Romeros, like what it was for Almirón, like Junior Alonso when he left, and so on and so forth. It's a process. It's a conveyor belt of talent. But I agree. I think now they're in a situation where they're balancing their books. It's not as big of a crisis, you would say. But now they have the advantage where they can use that money to woo in, foreign talents. It's all Libertad get a Leonel Bagnoni from Monterrey, and obviously Libertad have much more money and maybe are not as attractive as Cerro Porteño are. But who's to say that with the money that Cerro have from Chunin and Villasanti, that they want to get a star player that can help them obviously achieve their dream, which is win the Libertadores. So that's how I see it, especially from the fans' perspective. I mean, yes, you don't want your players to go. I think it sucks for the fans of that team to see their best players leave. But if it's a national team player as well, I think it's only beneficial that they want those players playing at the best teams in the world. I think it's important. I mean, I don't know what you, Ralph. I mean, I think you can follow what I'm trying to say here. Looking at some of the talents that have come from Cerro Porteño, who have done well at Cerro Porteño, make that move, and look at where they are right now.
And there's also an important point of who is the coach right now. Is Chiqui Arce, and what's Arce's kind of method been over the years? It was building up with young players. He's not really been one that brought in big stars. So, and some people say sometimes he's a bit stubborn or a bit arrogant in that respect, but he's going to try and do it his way, and probably bringing in a couple more younger players or local Paraguayan talent, like they've just bought Sergio Barreiro. So they like building up and bringing, or Chiqui likes building his teams like that, because what he always worries about of the big star when they come in is, will they be able to fit his style? And he's very demanding, I would say, or kind of not authoritarian, maybe that's not the right word, but it's his way or the highway, right? So he doesn't need a star to come in and start trying to have discussions with him. So that might also be a key factor here. Just one thing I wanted to add about the risk for Villasanti. Brazil is a super physical league, and we've seen, more physical sometimes the local Brazilian league than Europe. A lot of there's an idea in Europe that sometimes they say, oh, South Americans, can they, play with the physicality of England? And it's like, guys, have you ever watched the Brazilian league or Uruguayan football, even Paraguayan football? A couple of players I remember that were very talented went and came back because they didn't make it. Are people like Nestor Camacho and Willy Mendieta. They both had their chances in Brazil, but they weren't able to use it as their stepping stone. So that's kind of, I would say, for Villasanti is that word of warning that instead of going to Europe, you're going to a very physical league where you could get injuries, you could find it hard, you could kind of sink before you're able to have that time. So that's just kind of, the warning sign for him. But I think he's got the quality to be able to make that jump after to Europe.
I just wanted to really quick point out, and I agree with you, Ralph, about the fact that Brazil is a very physical league. But the only thing that I think would probably be an issue for Villasanti is going to such a league as Brazil and getting lost and not actually having a good season as good as he could have had in Cerro Porteño, and could have just gone straight to leagues like MLS and then make that jump again to Europe. And not only that, but there's a lot of competition as well in leagues like Brazil and Argentina, where you have a lot of kids and players that want to go to Europe. So that's another thing that he can keep in mind. But other than that, and going back to the talk about Cerro Porteño bringing in the new local talents, it's a good thing that the Cerro is doing with that, and it should be something that a lot more clubs in Paraguay should be doing, because we need to be more exposed. We need that talent to be more out there, and we need clubs like Cerro Porteño to expand in what we have, and instead of outsourcing.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's important, and certainly, you talk about that risk. It's a risk that they have to take. I mean, if they want to be that good player, they have to show up, and they have to understand that, hey, if I can do it in Brazil, I could do it in any other leagues, or at least in ones that provide that kind of challenge. You want to go from one level to another. That's just how it works, and just being consistent, being much better than you can be. And I think it's a risk, but if it goes its way, which hopefully, like a player like him, I see him as a very disciplined player. I think being the captain of a team that's at such a young age gives you that experience, and I think it can work out for him. I mean, I think he is in a good opportunity, but I guess it's all up to him. But if I was him personally, I take the deal. I take the risk. I mean, and just be confident in what you can do. I mean, Palmeiras are a huge club in their right, and you don't get those deals every so often, and Paraguayans typically do well. Yes, you have your outliers, obviously, but historically they typically do well in Brazil. And look at an example like Junior Alonso. I mean, he obviously played at other clubs as well, but he's only been there for a couple months, not a couple months. He's only been here for the year, and he's already becoming one of the best players in not just Atlético Mineiro, but in Brazil. So who's to say that Villasanti can't do that? And hopefully it can work out for him if he makes the deal. I think
I think for Villasanti, it is also that risk. It's a great point by Maria that he's going from being captain and being like a surefire starter to have to kind of break into a team and earn that position. But that's the kind of risk you've got to take if you're going to make that next jump in your career. So it's that time. It's kind of now or never, right?
100%. So switching from the players' rumors, we go to the managerial rumors. And one of the big news that we saw this week was the firing of Daniel Ganero, ultimately a manager that kind of had it coming. Certainly elimination from the Libertadores and not doing well in the league was the last straw for him. And it's unfortunate. I think after having done so much with the club, winning 4 straight titles, and kind of been kind of a symbol for a recent Olimpia side, he goes out this way. It's really unfortunate, but that's how it works, unfortunately, not just in South America, but in world football. What have you done for me lately? And, show everything that you can. But one of the rumors that we've been seeing so far, and I think one that ultimately might be the done deal, or at least is the one that looks close to happening, is Gabriel Milito coming to Paraguay, a manager who had coached previously in Argentina at Estudiantes, at his boyhood club at Independiente, also coached in Chile at O'Higgins. It's an interesting move. I mean, he's still a young coach. He's only 40 years old. I mean, certainly he isn't a big successful one. I was looking at some of the records that he has. I think he has about 50% of wins in his career. So he's not a bad coach or a good coach, but he's a decent coach. I mean, Maria, certainly you as the Olimpia fan, I'm certainly you were sad to see the departure of Ganero this week, but now comes in the rumors. Is this the one that could help Olimpia? They definitely need that kind of new chip in a way after going through what they did and winning those 4 straight league titles, and unfortunately elimination from the Libertadores. Is Milito the right one for this job? And also, he's had experience as a player, played at Barcelona, so clearly he has some sort of mentality, you would say, and also an influence of Pep Guardiola. So let's see. Do we see Tiki Taka at Olimpia this year if we get Milito?
Oh, it's a tough one, because not only is he very, he was well known as a player, but as a coach, like you mentioned, he doesn't have that history yet. He's still very young, which could be good, which could be bad. But looking at his history, I'm not too convinced. I would like to see more options for Olimpia. I hope that the new sporting director can make more moves, not just Milito, but like I said, being the fact that he played in Barcelona and he has that experience and he has that connection with Guardiola, that maybe he could take some tips from him. It could be a good thing. We need we as in Olimpia, we need coaches that are out there and have a different kind of experience. But coaching wise, I'm not really too convinced, other than the fact that he has that European experience in as a player. I'm not too sure though. The one thing that the deal is that he will demand for at least 4 players, top-notch players, like top-level players, for Olimpia. So that could be a good thing, because they need to expand their club as well, the squad. So we'll see. There's a lot more time to come before they make that decision. And like Brunote said, he's still weighing his options, and if he's not going to make a decision this week, he's going to wait. He's going to keep waiting. So we'll see. I do think they need to hurry, but there's a lot of more options that they could look at. But I don't know. I'm not too convinced yet.
They don't want to mess it up, Maria. They don't want to mess this up. This is a very important decision on Miguel Brunote, because he's just getting the chair of Trovato, and he took out the manager that's been the most successful in Olimpia in these last years. It's a really hard place to fulfill. If Milito comes, he needs to win quick. They're not going to wait for him. They're not going to give him too much time. The fans, at least, maybe the president will, maybe the sporting director, the new sporting director, like you said, maybe they will wait for Milito's work to show on the pitch. But the fans are they're not going to be that patient. They want to go again against Cerro Porteño that won the last championship. They want to go back to the Libertadores and have a good run, because that's what they're used to. So patient-wise, I don't know if Milito is really going to fit in Olimpia right now. He's going to come in with this European style, that's hitting big here in South America. We have to talk about the last champion in Copa Libertadores. We had a Portuguese coach. So European football, their style, their way of practicing, all the methods, everything is coming in very strong here in South America. If that's the right way to go or not, that's another big discussion that we can have another day. If South America is losing their essence, or if they're losing their way of playing and we're just adopting what the Europeans are doing, that's my way of seeing it. But you know, these are the kind of coaches that the Paraguay are going after lately. Even the young Paraguayan coaches, they're bringing in these kind of teams also. You know, you see Luqueño, how they try to play this week in Sudamericana. You see how Orteman, the head coach of Sudamerica, tries for his team to play also. So all the young coaches are trying to build up these teams that play a lot more with the ball, that have a lot more touches. Obviously, thankfully, now we have better grounds, we have better stadium, so you can try to play that way. You have Olimpia has just invested in a new in their facilities. They have a brand new gym. They have a brand new place to work. I think Milito and a lot of big coaches would like this. We mentioned last week Guti as an option. Also, you know, Olimpia is very well seen outside of the country. They all want to come into this big team because they know they're going to find everything they need to work and hopefully be successful. Milito is an option. There's 2 or 3 other names that are going around also. They're going to sit with them. They're going to have a couple of conversations, and then they'll make up their mind. But Milito looks like the best option right now, and fans like it. I would say 80 to 20%, maybe. You know, not everybody, like Maria said. You know, I don't think everybody's on top of it. I don't think everybody is supporting the decision, but it's a big one for the new president. He needs to hit it big with this election. He can't miss this one.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting kind of Olimpia at a crossroads, right? They've been hugely successful. They've almost fallen into what you would call a crisis for them, in that they didn't win the league. They're knocked out of both international competitions, the Trovato situation. So they're kind of looking, okay, we need to kind of reignite something and get something going. And then you have Milito's in a similar position from what we were mentioning. He's never really taken a team. He's never won a title as a coach. He's never really like taken that team and had enough time to get a big winning run together. So he's also looking for that next challenge where he can try and really get to be known as a coach. And just on the European influence is very interesting that in another team, River Plate in Paraguay, in Asunción, they actually brought in a Spanish coach this week, a guy called Aitor Garcia, he was the assistant to Fernando Cubero, who managed Olimpia, won the title with Libertad. He was also manager of Cerro and Guarani. So definitely, to Fede's point about bringing in the European football, and to Maria's point about European experience being interesting. I mean, this is what we're seeing in Paraguay, this influence. And a lot of the managers or the young coaches, when they're not coaching, when they're out of a job, they go and visit Europe. They go and see what coaches are doing there. They try and bring back ideas. You have a guy called Dani Farrar, for example, who, you know, he's a big fan of Guardiola, and he's gone to Europe and looked at different teams to try and implement that styles in Paraguay. So it's definitely the way they're going, and Milito could fit for that kind of theme that we're seeing in Paraguay right now.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think it's really going to be I mean, the thing about with Ganero, I mean, he had his time at Guarani and that got him his move to Olimpia. But when you look at a challenge like this, it's big. I mean, certainly, as you said, Olimpia are historically well known across, of course, they're huge in Paraguay, but they're hugely respected in South America and even in the world, because they know, like, they are the team in Paraguay. They are the big ones. You know, it's like what you see in Peñarol and Nacional in Uruguay, or Boca River in Argentina, or I don't know, Atlético Nacional in Colombia. I mean, they know the name and they know the kind of pressure that the fans have, and rightly so. I think, you know, should Milito comes in and they're on a bad stretch of not winning games in the first few games, it's pressure would be on, because, you know, they don't they ask for a lot, and they know that these guys want to succeed right on the get-go. So it's an interesting move if it does go about. But I do think that Olimpia do have their options. I think they understand that they cannot screw this up. They know they want to go for a name that they could trust and that they have an idea set, and they go from there. I mean, that's, like you said, a crossroads that hopefully will go the right direction, where they can hopefully take that to the next level and be consistent and battle it out again for that league title. I mean, I think that's all they want, really.
I believe Milito is not going to be the only change in Olimpia. I've been told that Olimpia is going to look more into the young players. We talked about this on the last episode. I said it. They have a squad with a lot of players that are way too mature. They're probably in the end of the road in their career. I'm talking about Roque Santa Cruz. I'm talking about Alcaraz. So there's going to be eventually a change. There's going to be young players coming into the squad, and Olimpia doesn't have the money that they had last year, apparently. So they're gonna tighten the belt, and they're gonna wait a little bit more. They're not gonna go all out and get big players like we see Libertad doing all the time. They're actually gonna look into their young players. They're gonna look into the young talent that lately Daniel Garnero didn't look. He didn't consider them, but that's going to change with the new sporting director. Also, that's what I've been told. So we're going to see another Olimpia for next year, not just with the next head coach, but also with the mentality coming in from these new people that are having the power in the club with this new president.
100%. It'll be very interesting, and I guess like we always see in Paraguay, it's always tricky. I mean, certainly they do need some sort of positive light after everything that's been going on with them, both on the pitch and off it. So let's hope that Olimpia are smart enough to make a decision like this, and they are able to trust whoever is coming in, and of course, what needs to be done for them to be on the right track and compete for titles. But before we finish off real quick, we do have to mention one last thing. The Copa Sudamericana second stage is back. We did see two of our Paraguayan teams play in their first legs. The first team that we do have to mention is Sportivo Luqueño, who played against Defensa Justicia. As you remember, we're in the group with Olimpia, losing 2-1 on the day over there in Villa Elisa. Obviously, not a good result to take back to Argentina next week. Certainly a game where they were leading as well, and they ended up blowing it in the second half. So it's going to be tough for them to see if they can try to get an away goal over in Argentina, but not impossible. And of course, we do have to mention Sol de America, as you had mentioned, Ralph, with Orteman coming in with this team. They tied Universidad Católica, who also were dropped out of the Copa Libertadores, tying in Paraguay as well, 0-0. So both teams are coming into the next game away, needing to win to get to the next round. I mean, Ralph, I know you saw the games, or then the highlights of the games. I mean, do you see any of these teams qualifying? Do you see one of them? Do you see both of them? How do you rate their chances heading into the second leg of their matches?
I think very difficult for both teams. In both cases, the away teams dominated possession. I think both had around 70-75% possession. So, despite both Luqueño and Sol being the home team, they were kind of really struggling to get the ball. Particularly the game I watched, the full game, was Luqueño. I mean, they went ahead after 8 minutes because Aldo Vera scored an amazing goal, which if you guys haven't seen it, if you're watching now, go look it up after this podcast, because he scores from behind the halfway line. And he's a great player, by the way. He's one of those players that probably would never have made it in Europe because he likes time and space on the ball, but very technical, very good. And wow, that was a great strike. And after the game, he actually said in the interview, he said, well, in the changing room, they had told me that the goalkeeper likes to move out of the box. So they saw that, and he saw that after 8 minutes that happened. But then after that, it was kind of an onslaught of Defensa Justicia, who we also saw against Olimpia. Very good on the ball, very good controlling. They could have had, maybe more goals than they did. So Luqueño at least go with the hope that they're still, they're still in the tie, just one goal behind, but it looks very tough. For Sol and Orteman's team, maybe they have a better chance, because if they can sneak a goal and they get a score draw, they would go through and away goals in Chile. But again, it's another very good manager. Holland he's a very good coach, and I think he will have fixed any issues he saw in that first game to then take it to Sol, and that's going to be a big challenge, I think, for Ortaman to see how can I set my team up to get the goal and also not to concede, 2 or even 3 when we go to Chile. So tough for both teams. The second legs are next week, so it's non-stop.
I thought Ralph was going to put his money on his Luqueño, but I didn't see that happening. We'll see what happens with Luqueño. They have so much trouble off the pitch, with their president not having the support of the city. It hasn't been easy for them in that sense, and they really have a tough opponent. Defensa y Justicia showed that they were ready in Copa Libertadores. They were so close to advancing, and they're ready, I believe, to moving forward. I don't see Luqueño doing it. I do think that Sol de America could make a run against this Chilean team because of all the potential that Sol de America has. They used the same team in the local league, so maybe they were a little tired for this first leg against Universidad Católica, but we'll see what happens on the match next week. I believe Sol de America has a lot of good players, and they have a lot of experience. Some of them haven't played lately, like Miguel Zamudio, like Benitez that was in the bench. He couldn't even start because these guys are coming back, into rhythm, into being in a team. They weren't considered in their last teams. They haven't had much action in these last couple of months. So Sol de America needs to get better, but it's gonna be up to the coaches, I believe. They've seen what they're up against now, and there's gonna be a lot of strategy in those games that are coming up next week, and there's a lot more at risk. So you're gonna have to go and look for goals. In the first leg, you're always too cautious. You don't want to get a goal in your net, and I think Sol de America tried to do that also on the match playing home. They just didn't want to go get that ball inside their goal from their goalkeeper. So they're waiting for the match to. For the leg to be done in Chile. We'll see what happens with them. But my money is on Sol de America. I don't see Luqueño going through.
Well, at least you're feeling confident. So we will wait and see what happens. But yeah, guys, I mean, we can only feel hopeful for these Paraguayan teams. I mean, they're not in impossible tests where they have to come back from 2-0 or something. I mean, they're in a good shot. But I agree. I think Sol de America definitely have a side that are able to compete. And I mean, guys, Maria, what do you think? Do you see any of these two teams making it to the next round?
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly say that I am also putting all my faith and positivity in Sol de America. I think they have a better chance to make it through. It was a shame that Sportivo Luqueño didn't get that win or a draw that they could have had if it wasn't for that little mistake that cost them the game. But there is also good potential there in Sportivo Luqueño. They could turn the whole thing around and come back and pass through. But that's just very positive me thinking. So, but we'll see. Sol de America has also played very well. They had a lot of opportunities that they just couldn't finish. And if they keep playing like that and they can find the net, then they can definitely get through.
100%, guys.
That's true. Maria just raised a great point that I totally forgot. Yeah, Luqueño could have drawn that game. You're right. Like right in the last minute, they had that free header like 6 yards out. So despite really struggling, they could have still come away with the result, which that would have been huge. Yeah, it reminded me a lot of Marcelo Valles in the semi-final. Luqueño got to the Sudamericana semi-final a few years back, and Marcelo Valles, the left back, had like a great chance that would have taken them to the final, and he just missed. And it was giving me flashbacks when I watched the game, and they missed that chance on Tuesday or Wednesday. I'm mixing up the days, but one of those days this week.
Yeah, definitely, and we'll see. We have to feel confident, so we shall see what occurs. But guys, I mean, another great episode as always. A lot to talk about. I mean, certainly there are, even on like what could be slow weeks, we ended up having good discussions about many things. So again, thank you for tuning in. It was really a pleasure. So for myself, Roberto Rojas, for Maria, for Ralph, and for Fede, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Guarani Vision. See you soon.